Welcome to the show. This is live, if you are watching it live, and my name is Bret, and this is my channel. And hopefully, if this is your first time here, you'll click the subscribe button, all that typical YouTube stuff, because we're live every week on Thursdays, usually. I'm talking about DevOps, specifically container DevOps, which is what I love and what I spend my life doing now for the last 5+ years, it seems like. So please come back and watch us on Thursdays. This show is also sponsored by my Patreon page, and I have courses and all that stuff you can get down in the description. But today we're going to be talking specifically about what's going on right now. Obviously, a lot of us are in quarantine and at home, just trying to stay safe and healthy. And it maybe if you're someone who's worked in an office, you haven't had to work full time from home, and you maybe don't have all the tools, and maybe your team is sort of struggling to get up to speed on how to work remotely with everyone. But there's so much stuff out there coming out right now about all those tools, right? We've got Slack and Zoom and all these sort of basic collaboration tools. I wanted to get more into the DevOps tools and maybe the developer and programming tools that we might be using in a more technical role. So I reached out to my buddy Kevin Griffin, who said, sure, I will be on the show with you, and let's talk about it. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Bret. How you doing, bud?
Good. So in our background is some shots from DockerCon, because right now, like, we just would have ended KubeCon, DockerCon would have been soon. Like, there have been all these conferences happening, and we're all in isolation. So I thought, what if we put some people in our background to pretend like we're really at a conference? Why not?
Exactly. That sounds good to me.
So Kevin has been on the show at least a couple of times before. I've been on his show. We actually run companies together. We have this whole history. It goes back decades. But Kevin, tell everybody what you do right now. Like, what's your day to day?
Yeah, sounds good. So my name's Kevin Griffin. I'm an independent software consultant. I work primarily with Microsoft products, so ASP.NET Core, a lot of Microsoft Azure. And my day-to-day is just helping businesses move their infrastructure to Azure and support their line of business applications.
Yeah. And then you had this other thing.
This other thing. Well, I have lots of other things. So on the side, I also do a lot of training, specifically on Microsoft technologies and web technologies.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I also have a podcast. I do a podcast every week called Two Frugal Dudes. It has nothing to do with technology, but it has everything to do with personal finance.
Yeah.
In layman's terms. So Two Frugal Dudes on everywhere podcasts are from.
Yeah.
And I've been work from home for hold on, let me check my watch won't tell me. I've been at work at home since 2011.
Yeah.
So eight some years now.
Yeah, we kind of made that journey together. I started and you started, and we were both trying to figure it out. And yeah.
And I'm coming to you from, I call it my shed quarters. So I have taken working from home to the next level, and I built a shed in my backyard specifically to be my home office. And I had to commute to work this morning. The rest of you all get to work from home. I had a 50-foot commute.
Yeah, you had to go outside to get to your office.
I did, and it's on a day like today. It's not bad. It's sunny. It's not like mid 60s, 70s. On rainy days, I don't like that commute because I have to walk in the rain and the puddles and the mud. It's awful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. So the shed quarters is sort of a work in progress. You've been building it over the years, but and adding to it. Now you got the green screen, and you got the lighting, and you got the podcast mic, and now you're ready to be the streaming star. So
exactly, and no one can see the mess that my office is because I'm facing this direction. I have the green screen.
Yeah.
But that way, I'd scare people.
Right. I think a lot of us, especially when you have a family where nobody's leaving the house, like it's pretty hard to keep it even reasonably clean at this point. Like we're just all trying to keep it together. So you also have this other cool thing I just wanted to mention for a minute because it's very timely. Is that you have a 3D printer and you're doing some printing. You're doing a lot of printing.
I am. So I'm working with a local group of makers here in our area, the Hampton Roads area, to build face shields for everyone in hospital areas that don't have enough personal protection devices to protect themselves against the COVID-19.
Yeah.
And our goal isn't to produce personal protection devices because those are there's strict guidelines for the quality of a personal protection device. But what we're building are face shields that can be 3D printed in about an hour or so.
Okay.
And then we take off the shelf transparency sheets as the actual shield. And the goal of these shields is to prolong personal protection devices. So if someone's wearing a surgical mask or an N95 mask, the thing that will make that quickly deteriorate is if fluid gets on it. Someone vomits, someone sneezes, someone projects a bodily fluid that they probably shouldn't. And if it gets on the mask, it makes the mask bad and needs to get thrown away or sanitized in some other manner. So the face shields help prevent that bodily fluid from getting on the personal protection devices. And so it's a little thing that we can do to try to help reduce the spread of the disease. And I have a 3D printer. I love my 3D printer running all the time. It's not running right now because it's in the shed quarters, and that you would hear it in the background if I had it running. So I turned it off for the show.
That's true. So this is what it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the test. That's pretty cool. And I never would have thought we would be using 3D printers to, help others in this time of need, but that's really cool. And I just saw that on the internet the other day. So I thought we'd mention that. So thank you for doing your part. And I'm impressed that you could actually get all the supplies to be able to do all that. That's one of those things where it's like, it seems like we keep running out of the things that we need to make the things that we're running out of. And so it's a cascading series of supply chain failures. But
we are low on filament. So the group I'm working with, one of the nice things is since we're doing this, people are throwing donations at us. So we're putting in bulk orders for more filament for our printers. And hopefully in the next couple days, next week, we'll all get a restock of filament so our printers can keep going.
Yeah.
Because every hospital and outpatient facility in our area have been asking for these shields. And it's like printer ink. So if your printer runs out of ink, you stop printing. When the 3D printer runs out of filament, you stop printing. So we're trying to restock all of our filament. But anyone out there watching, every local area probably already has a group like we have. Doesn't matter what country you're in, what city, state, locale. Do some research on Facebook. You can probably find a local group. If you don't have a 3D printer to help support the cause, you might toss a couple dollars to those folks so they can buy
more
the
of the
material.
supplies. Yeah. Because I'm sure it's going a long way.
Yep.
So that's really cool, and I just wanted to make sure that we got that out there because in case people didn't know how they could help, there's obviously lots of charities and things like that. But I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to help, even if we don't have those charities locally or whatever. And geeks like geek stuff. So anything technical that we can do. So and there's some other stuff I think there's out there that I'll probably share next week that I just didn't have time to organize for this week. But so the purpose of this show was to talk about like remote tech and getting the things in your team to sort of collaborate together as if you were in the same physical office. And of course, since we've been doing that for a long time, we have lots of ideas. So we're going to try to take this in 3 different stages. I think the first part I want to talk about is the non-technical tools that are maybe a little less known. Like we all have heard of Slack and GitHub and Skype and Zoom and these basic tools for audio, video, and text chat and stuff like that. But some of them, like the one that I've actually been checking out recently, and I haven't got a lot of people to experiment with me on it. So it's called Tandem Chat. I actually just discovered this on a podcast about a month ago. And you basically run it on Mac or Windows. It's a dedicated app, and it's kind of like an always-on audio video chat room. And so you can jump into a room. There's other tools that do stuff like that, right? Where you can just sort of be in a room And when
Yeah.
other people, like even Discord, the Slack alternative does that. But the thing that this does really well for in terms of business is it does allow you to share screen. And when you do that, you get the multiple cursors. So when you're sharing your screen, the other person has their cursor on your screen, kind of like if you remember Screen Hero that
Mm-hmm.
Slack actually bought, they can do that. And then the other thing is it integrates with a lot of your apps and web tabs, like a lot of the web apps you're using. So when you're working with someone else on something, in case you don't want to have to share, like, there's that whole process of saying, oh, here's a Google Doc I'm working on. Okay, let me copy and get the share link. Okay, let me put that into our text chat. Let me send that to you. And then they got to go find it in their text chat and click the link. There's that whole thing, right? Well, this app allows you to essentially, it knows what app is in the foreground, and you can just click a button in it, and it will share whatever that is, whatever page that is, or whatever app that is, with the other person so that they can go there in their version of the app. So if it's a website, it's just a URL, but it actually has interfaces with a lot of desktop apps too, like Notion and other things. So I'm a big Notion fan, which Notion is kind of like Evernote, or Notion. I should probably just mention it, but it's a collaboration tool that allows you to capture all sorts of notes and different types of things in spreadsheets and all that. And it's now Notion. This one down here, I should just probably mention it. We'll talk about that in a second. But Tandem is pretty cool, and right now they're letting everybody have it for free, and it even runs on Linux. So if you're in a team and you're already doing the Zooms and the Slacks and all the other things, this would be a cool way to try an even smoother process of hopping in and out. My wife and I actually have been using it lately. If we're on different floors and working, so that we can't just yell at each other in the house, we'll set it up so that we're both in a room together, but in that room we're muted, and then we'll just unmute to talk, and we don't have to have a full Zoom call or something else running in the background. And you can always be sharing your screen in it, so you can sort of have it like it's this little tiny mini window basically in the bottom right corner of your screen that shows it can optionally show your webcam or just the microphone, or also screen sharing at the same time, and it gives you that nice little mini window in the corner. And it's meant to be running sort of in the background all the time, not as an app that you're, kind of like Zoom, where you're sort of meant to be in the Zoom itself and looking and using Zoom directly. So anyway, tried that out. That's pretty cool for teams. I just don't have a big team. As a consultant, you often have to just use the tools that your client uses, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of teams aren't like they have their own rules, their own security requirements. So it can be tough as a consultant because every client's got their own set of tools. All right. This one was suggested by someone I think, I can't remember actually where it was suggested. I think it was suggested in one of my other Hangout groups. So Coco, I think that's how you say it. Which is similar to Tandem. I think it's been around longer, and it's kind of like this weird sort of, you have a map of an imaginary office, and you hop into these rooms, and then you can chat with people in the rooms. It's also not cheap. So I think it's kind of more enterprisey, even though it doesn't look enterprisey, but it's like $10 or $15 a month per person. So it must be doing more than what I thought it was. But I have never used it, but someone suggested it, so I thought I'd mention it as a collaboration tool.
It kind of looks like a video game.
Yeah. Like
an RPG, and your character walks around from room to room.
A modern version of Pac-Man, maybe, where I'm supposed to like run around the room. Okay, so yeah, and you have different logos for what types of interaction you're having, so you can hop into rooms. That's funny. I have lots of questions, but I'm not going to bother their bot with them because I don't know what this is all about. But then it starts to look like it's a full-fledged Zoom kind of experience at that point. So yeah, pretty neat on that one. Probably won't be using that, but it's a pretty neat one. And so once we get into past those sort of standalone collaboration tools, a lot of us are already in Slack. So there are lots of Slack bots out there, and one that was thrown up in Twitter today as an idea is the Stand-Uply bot, which essentially goes into your Slack and provides stand-up sort of agile practice kind of things. And I've never used it. Thought it was pretty cool. I was checking that out. And it looks like it allows you to have more control over just ad hoc. I'm jumping in a room and telling everybody what I've been doing lately. Sort of, it's a little bit better process, retrospectives, stuff like that. It's kind of neat. I always love Slack bots because it saves me from having to have one more app, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's other bots out there. In fact, if you're in chat and you have your own recommendations on bots that your team uses, Slack bots, to make Slack more fun. And I mean, there's the taco bot. There's all sorts of Slack bots you can get. But, you know, there's some that are for business purposes. So we'll try that. All right. So getting more into the technical stuff, and then some stuff that Kevin and I are going to try to get working together. We were playing around with some of these tools beforehand because some we've used and some we haven't. And we thought, well, you know, let's try out some stuff. So the first one is from Alex Ellis, who was actually on the show a couple of months ago, and his podcast is going to go out here in a few weeks, actually. So if you're a podcast subscriber, you'll see that one. He's got lots of open source tools, and his most notable one is OpenFaz, which is one of the most popular functions as a service platforms that he created. And he has this relatively new one, I think he made it last year, called Inlets. And the thing that Inlets does is it's kind of like, if you've heard of ngrok, there's some other tools out there, but it essentially allows you to use your own machine, unlike these other ones that are sort of a SaaS product that you have to pay for. This is a free open source product. So if you go get like a DigitalOcean droplet for $5, you install Inlets on that machine, and then you run Inlets locally against that machine. It's kind of acting like a server, and then it allows you to use that machine to route traffic into your local machine. And that allows you to do a couple of things. One is that if you need someone else on your team to see what you're working on, and maybe they just need some sort of port, a web page or a web API or something, and you're no longer on the corporate network, and you don't have necessarily your own infrastructure to deploy these things to in the cloud, you could just do this really quickly, and then, you know, whatever Docker port you publish or whatever app port you publish locally, you could just redirect that from your server on the internet and just tell them to go to that server, right? That's one way to do it. The other thing is, like, a lot of us that are testing DevOps tools, we want to test SSL. And one of the best ways to test SSL is Let's Encrypt. But Let's Encrypt requires that the endpoint you're using to create the certificate for be on the internet. So you could use this to get Let's Encrypt certificates for your local machine that uses your own domain on the internet through your little, you know, DigitalOcean droplet or whatever VM you have on the internet that's running Inlets. And that would allow you to do that. So, or, you know, like anything else, like if you're testing stuff in DevOps and you want people to just test it, you know, come in from the internet, you can. Or if you've got webhooks, right? So classic, another case is if you're testing webhooks locally, but you need things on the internet like GitHub and other tools to send you a webhook, you can use this to do that as well, because it's a port on the internet. And you can just point them to that IP address or domain name if you have it. So he's created it's really easy to use. I'm not going to go through a demo because he actually talked a lot about it. You can actually look on this YouTube channel. Back in January, we did a show. You can just look for the OpenFaz Alex Ellis show, and you can check that one out. I will put that in the show notes, by the way, for the rebroadcast of this. So if you're checking the description, if you're not watching this live, you can see that. Do you think you could use that, Kevin? I don't know if you have that within your...
I pay for ngrok because I use it so often, and it's for a couple of the scenarios you just talked about where I'm testing webhooks, and the webhook wants to hit something internet facing, but I'm trying to do some development locally. So I set up ngrok to forward it to my local machine and to do all that stuff. But they're fancy features like having a custom domain. You have to be under the paywall in order to get that.
Yeah.
Or else you get the random URL every time you start ngrok, and it's a pain in the butt going to update your webhooks to support whatever it is you're testing. And I'd love this just so I wouldn't have to pay for ngrok anymore.
Right.
I wouldn't mind having a small VM up on Azure or DigitalOcean that all it does is funnel requests from the internet to my machine when I'm connected to it. So I'm going to have to look at this myself.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think it was one of his motivations was ngrok is a paid service. We don't always need a paid service. You may only use it one day a month.
Yeah.
or whatever. And so he's trying to create sort of a superior do-it-yourself thing. And one of the things that Alex is really good at is he makes his CLI tools really easy to use. It's very Docker esque to me that he makes the command lines, and he's got a lot of other stuff on his GitHub, so you can find those things too. He's got other things for deploying Kubernetes, like it's called Ketchup. He's got another thing that makes it easy to deploy apps on Kubernetes. So it's pretty neat stuff, and I don't yet have this strong need for it, but I keep looking for reasons to use it. So anyway, that's a cool one. The next one is kind of obvious. I think people have talked about diagram. It used to be called Draw.io. Diagrams online, they're collaborative, so they just store as a Google Doc or as a OneDoc or OneCloud or whatever all the other Dropbox, all the other different types of document storage. So you can work collaboratively in this with other people. This is like one of the closest things to a whiteboard. Zoom has a whiteboard built in, and other things have whiteboards built in, but this one is a little more full featured, so you might want to check that out. If you know of another whiteboarding tool, by the way, out there in chat, let us know, because that one is something that I don't have a lot of good stuff for. While we're here talking about the super non-technical tools, like in terms, we're about to get into stuff like into the CLI and VS Code and stuff like that. I just want to toss out Notion because I use it every day and I love it. It's very collaborative focused. In fact, they have a whole remote work page now because we're all working from home. But it's my new favorite tool. I've used it for over 2 years now. It's my primary business tool in my team. We have 4 or 5 people using it. And it's kind of like a Google Doc where people can work on the same page at the same time. Everything's a web page where they also have dedicated apps. But it's storing data as rich objects. So you can move data chunks. It's storing text, I guess, as a data object. And so you can move things around, you can drag and drop, you can make things look like calendars, and you can take that same data and turn it into a spreadsheet, and then turn that spreadsheet into a Kanban board. It's really neat stuff. It's hard to describe it in just a 30-second demo. But they have a free version that gives you, I think, 600 objects, which is a lot, I think, for free. And then they have paid plans that I've been paying for over 2 years, because when I started using this tool, I basically moved from like 4 tools to this one. I used Google Docs less. I moved from Evernote. I had a decade worth of Evernote. There was Google Sheets I was using less now that I was using this. And we were using Trello. So this now does all of the Kanban stuff that we did in Trello. So, and I'm sure there's other tools I was using that I now use this more for as well. So it's the only thing it doesn't have is you can't do drawing in it. So like if you're on a tablet or you have a stylus, and you're used to that sort of drawing experience in some of the other note programs, you can't do those yet with this. But you can embed all that stuff. So like you can embed YouTube videos, you can embed tweet boxes and all that stuff. Do you use this? I don't even know if we've talked about it.
I do. I just started paying for Notion. I am slowly trying to migrate off of Evernote. And what convinced me to use Notion was I was tracking conference submissions. And I was able to go into Notion and create a Kanban board for the conferences I was submitting to. And the biggest problem I had was not submitting to the conferences, but remembering to submit to conferences before their call for papers ended. So I would go into Notion. Whenever I heard about an event, I created an object that told me the event, where it was, when the event was, and when their CFP closed. And then I could order them in my Kanban board based off of CFP closure dates. And at a glance, I would go in once a week, look at all the events when their CFPs ended, and then go in, do my work to submit, and then move them to another category. It was also easy to track rejections versus acceptances and all that good stuff too. That's what sold me on Notion. And you've been using it forever. Our good friend Marie has been using it forever. And just paying attention to people who use it constructively, it really helps sell it. Because I think when you dive into it for the first time, you really don't understand the vast landscape of what you can do with Notion. That's the hard part. There's There's like a whole like scripting API language built into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do with it that I don't do a fraction of. Yep.
Yeah, and he mentioned Marie. So she is basically the internet, like what I try to be to Docker, she is to Notion. So she's got her own course out in case you're into Notion or if you want to give it a shot. I mean, obviously there's the app, but if you wanted to take it seriously, she is one of the masters on Notion. So I'll put this in the chat. And she's also got a YouTube channel you can check out. In fact, I should be putting all of these in the chat. I don't know why I'm not putting them all in there. So there's Tandem and Coco. There's Stand Uply. And then we had Inlets. I was behind on this. And then we have diagrams. I'm spamming the chat with links. And then Notion. And I just, how I found out about Notion was a friend of mine. They were doing a friend of mine was doing, they had an outage and their team was troubleshooting. And so everyone was using a Notion page to throw all of the screenshots and all like, they were just dumping in text, logs, screenshots, like everything, all the media that they could think about. And then they made it a public link and were sharing it with others. So they shared me this web link that was like, a URL. And I brought up this web page and it was beautiful looking dissertation of their issue. Like all the people, everybody's like commenting in there. And I was like, what is this thing? It's crazy. I mean, it looked like a custom web page they had made. And I thought, this is beautiful. It's very full featured. And I was able to comment in line and like, I was like, what is this thing? I've never heard of this. And he's like, oh man, you haven't heard of Notion? You got to get on Notion. And ever since then, I have been addicted and always trying to use it more and more. So that the Notion team is great. And I probably should get like, I think I actually have, I probably should put a link in there. I think I have a Notion, you get something free if I share a link.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Delete that other link. Use the affiliate link.
Yeah, I think I have earn credit. Yeah. You get $10 in credit if you use this link. So, yeah. So there's a referral link. It gives you $10 in credit, which will get you like your first month or something, or 2 months. I'm not sure what the pricing on it is for an individual. But you can get a lot. You can use it a lot for free. I think I used it for at least a month for free before I decided to pay for it. All right. So so other people have mentioned some things too, like RocketChat. RocketChat is a great alternative to Slack. There's a lot of people that are doing that. So you can either use their hosted version or your own. That's pretty cool. I'm stuck on Slack because everyone seems to be on Slack. So I wish I could use Discord rather, because I love Discord too. But it's we're all stuck on Slack for now until and the Slack UI is changing. So I keep waiting for my updates on some of my channels because some of them have the new UI and I'm digging the new UI. But not all of them are changed over yet. So I'm kind of anxious for that. Have you seen the new UI?
I have 1 or 2 Slacks that have switched over. It's it's all right. It's a little bit of a mind shift because when you have 50 Slacks and you switch between them, it's like, well, this one's old, this one's new, that one's old. And
yeah, I'm hoping this doesn't take 6 months, right? Like I was kind of hoping it would be over the course of a couple of weeks, but well, congrats, Slack team on getting that major UI change out without pissing everybody off, because that's hard to do. When you got millions and millions of people using your stuff, it's hard to change anything and not make people upset. All right, so this is the thing that you and I demoed last year, I think, right? Like we talked about live share and you were showing it off to me and I was kind of blown away by it. And it's another one of these tools that it's there. We didn't know it was there, and as soon as you see it's there, you're like, okay, well, this is now the thing I'm going to use from now on for this problem. So why don't you pitch it? Like, what's your elevator pitch for this tool?
Let's see. Live share is basically collaborative IDE, integrated development environments. So with live share, we can both work in the same editor at the same time on the same files. And you see what I see what you see. I can run code on your machine You can run code on my machine. It's basically as though we were pair programming at the same desk at the same time, but we're 20 miles away, or you're 500 miles away, or 5,000 miles away.
Right.
Live share really makes that easy to do because if you and I are using the same editor, really the difference is what's on my disk and what's on your disk. So LiveShare connects our two editors together, and someone's the host, and and then you can have multiple people that connect to it.
Yeah.
And we all get copies of what is on your machine, what you're looking at, within certain permissions. So you can say, all right, these files someone can't look at. And I can look at a file that you're looking at. You can highlight code on it. You can change code. If
I can make you read only,
debug an issue. What's that?
I can make you read only. Yeah, like if you.
I believe you can.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at an issue, and this is how they demo it at Microsoft, is there's a bug in our software. Let's go into the file and scan, and then Kevin, the remote person, says, "Wait, I see the issue." Changes it on the fly and says, "Okay, let's rerun this."
Yeah.
And I can see your console output. So if you have terminal going, I can see your terminal output. It's really nifty, and they've put a lot of work into it. So it's built into VS Code, and I'm also a Visual Studio user. So I go back and forth between full Visual Studio and then VS Code, but it's built into both. So I can be a Visual Studio user, and you can connect to my Visual Studio through VS Code, so like you're on a Mac. Mac has Visual Studio, but it's not like the Windows version of Visual Studio. So you can still help me by being on a different platform.
Yeah. And I thought we'd just demo this.
Yeah.
Just because it's not hard to set up, and there's a lot of tools out there that pair programming is not new. Remote pair programming is not new. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about TMUX and some really sort of the traditional terminal kind of hacking stuff, maybe a little bit more common in the past, but this is my preferred way now. Unless we need to be both on a server and doing this, which I honestly think we could still do, because there's now all these plugins where you can SSH through VS Code, right? You can SSH into a server and have it just transparently editing stuff on a remote machine. You can you can do it in a container. There's all these things that these plugins. But let's bring this up here. So on my screen, what I've done so far, if I can find it. So this is my VS Code window. I'm in a Jekyll. I mean, it could be any files in a directory. It doesn't really matter. I'm in a simple Jekyll static site, and what I need to do is I first need to add the plugin. So I have that plugin already. It's installed, and you'll notice this new little live share button at the very bottom. So if you can see at the bottom of my screen is this little live share button, and if I'm on, if I'm in a file, let's say, and I'm in here looking at this file, and I want Kevin to come in. What it's going to do is this is a free service, which is crazy because there's obviously servers on the internet that are maintaining this. So it connects through you have to authenticate. You either authenticate through Microsoft or GitHub, and I chose GitHub account, and it gives me this URL that I will then go over in my private little chat with Kevin and give him this URL, and then he clicks that URL.
Yep.
Notice how I can make it read only on my screen. I'm actually gonna, you can see down at the bottom right, this little pop-up says, "Hey, I've pasted the key into your clipboard. You can make it read only," which I didn't because I want him to make edits, and I can take that away. And then I'm on my page, and now Kevin gets his own cursor, and we can both, kind of like in a Google Doc, he can be writing up there, right? And away we go. And on his screen, he's actually getting a copy of the code on his computer, right? So technically, you could be running this, right? You could run Jekyll in the background, and this, in theory, should work. I'm not sure if I guess it's everything in your view that it tries to sync. I'm not really sure exactly.
So on my screen, I get your workspace, your directory listing, and you're in one file, but then I can go into another file and I can start messing around.
Yeah, and you'll notice on my screen when he does that, that file shows up in
Yep.
my top left as another file being edited. I can go in that file, and he's already in there going about it, doing his thing. And this just works. And then when I'm ready to be done, it's this little button down at the bottom of my toolbar, down at the very bottom here. I can click on that, and I get some options. I can quit. We can share a terminal together.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots. I mean, I keep finding out that I don't know enough about this tool because there's more to it. Their website has a lot of details in this URL I'll put into the chat, which this URL, you'll see that there's a bunch of examples and quick start guides on joining. It's all done over an SSL connection, so the fact that it was made by Microsoft gives me a lot more trust and faith in this being a relatively secure option. It's been downloaded almost 2 million times.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I would trust, right? I mean, Microsoft's the lead team on the VS Code project itself, so you're running their code already by running VS Code. I'm not going to guarantee anything here, but I if there's some random dude on the internet that's making this thing, I would be a little skeptical because I'm essentially syncing all my code through some cloud server to someone else, right? So I would be a little bit more careful about it if it was not Microsoft. And the fact that it's free is there's probably companies out there that are going, oh crap, like we have a tool you pay for and this tool is free. So that's pretty cool. And, Kevin and I were playing with this beforehand. It's not foolproof. I think there's some things we don't quite understand about which files it needs to sync and which files it doesn't. There's clearly some configuration going on there that we maybe need to learn a little bit more about. I've only used it for some of the most basic stuff like this, where I just need to share a file out. But I've got some projects coming up that I'm going to be collaborating with other companies on. And a lot of times, our traditional method of doing this was just sharing screen, right? And you would talk about my code while I'm doing it, or you would guide me or whatever. You would be sitting kind of like in a real pair situation. You wouldn't have access to the keyboard necessarily in a lot of cases unless I slid it over to you. But in this case, this is not near as bandwidth intensive or as we could be on this file together, and I wouldn't have to also be in a screen sharing voice video chat program just to make it work, right? So. Anyway, pretty cool stuff. I'm looking forward to using this in some future projects that I'm going to be working with some teams on some Docker stuff with. So we'll probably be working on some YAML and Docker files together. And ideally, what I try to do in projects, especially as a consultant, I'm sure Kevin's the same way. Ideally, I want them to do a majority of the work, and I'm just there advising and guiding them down the road so that they're learning faster instead of me doing all the work myself for them. So this is a good thing. And I think, saying, hey, we're using VS Code, not some tool that the company has to subscribe to and pay money to some unknown entity that they don't know who it is. It just works. It's out of the box. It's free. So hopefully everybody will be cool with that. All right.
What's really interesting is you can do shared servers and shared terminals. So you were just talking about inlets and opening a pipe from the internet into your machine. One of the things we do with Live Share is I can share one of the ports on my machine, and you can access my local port through Live Share. So if I'm running the app and I'm on port 8080.
Yeah, we demoed that last time, didn't we? I'm now remembering that. Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite parts. Is like, well, here, you go to the server and run the code off on my machine, and you can see what it's doing. And that just saves so much time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I could share. Oh, so there's options here, right? Share server.
Yeah.
And then I can share terminal, read, write. So then we're on my machine.
Yep.
And
I can type in it.
Kevin's typing that.
Yeah.
I wonder wonder if I could prevent sudo in that situation.
Format
Yeah,
C.
that's right. That's right. Focus. Let's see. Request other participants to follow you. Oh yeah, that's right. Because this is the feature where if I'm working and I want your attention to say, hey, come look at what I'm doing in this file, I could do that. But that is really neat. We need to find a project to work on it together so we can just use it. And then I kicked him out. And so what happens when I kick you out? Do you lose access to everything?
It closes the VS Code workspace. So it just opens up a blank workspace.
Okay.
It says if nothing ever happened.
Right.
Away.
So it cleans up after itself on your machine, in other words. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so the last one that I had that I really wanted us to dive into was a conversation I was having with some other people. My Patreon membership, we have a thing called High Fiver, so people that give $5 or more on the Patreon for me, we get together monthly and we talk about DevOps stuff. And the topic shifted to these sort of remote pairing tools. And we started talking about iTerm or TMUX, rather, TMUX and Screen, some of these tools in the shell for jumping. Really, originally they were for jumping into servers and you having access to something where you didn't have to worry about losing all your work when you disconnect. So if you SSH in the machine and then you go into Vim and you want to do a bunch of stuff in Vim and then you want to leave or you want to close your laptop and you don't want that all to be lost, you would do something like TMUX, which is, I think, pretty much the gold standard now. TMUX allows you to have a virtual session, essentially, so that you can SSH in and out of that machine, but not lose your work. So it runs in the background, sort of like a daemon. It is a daemon, technically. And it's running on that Linux machine so that you can jump right back in and you can have multiple tabs and multiple side-by-side shells and stuff like that inside of it, so that it's almost like a terminal within a terminal. And I use that a lot when back in the day, before we had all this GitOps and DevOps stuff. I would be shelled into a server, and I would have a bunch of Vims open, trying to do a bunch of server stuff. And maybe it was through a jump host. A jump host is that thing that you have that it's a server sitting on the internet that allows you to access other machines by jumping through it. So you have to SSH into it and then into a machine, sort of a double hop scenario. And so when I was in those days, and those days are largely gone, at least for me, because a lot of what we do now is we don't do it directly on the server. We just do things in GitHub, and then automation tools will update all of our infrastructure, right? We don't actually have to go in and manually touch infrastructure. We do the automation side. But back in that day, we did have to do that. Well, TMUX, let me just bring that up so that you can go check that out if you're not aware of TMUX. It's a little hard to get started, I think, because it's a largely there's not a lot of mouse support in it, especially by default. So you kind of got to learn all the command line stuff for it, and you can change those. So let me get down here to the README. So it works on any Unix type machine. It's not, if you're in Windows, you probably have to use Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL. And you can technically use it locally. So a lot of Linux people will use this. Before we had all these fancy terminals, they would use this tool to have a bunch of different terminals on their screen all in one window, and then they could close their physical terminal window and come back later and have their whole environment still ready to go, right? And you would have different projects and different environments all set up for those environments. And so there were those days where I used to do that before we had wonderful VS Code, which is now becoming more of my default tool day to day. But Teammate is an alternative to that is designed for TMUX and sharing with two different people. So with TMUX, technically two people can jump into a server and work together on the same screen for pairing. With Teammate, the problem with TMUX is that you have to do some things. You have to do a lot of work to get that to work. You have to make sure you both have the SSH keys to get in. You both have to type the exact right commands to get into the same TMUX window. With Teammate, it's kind of it is a fork of TMUX that's designed for sharing. So it's kind of like VS Code live sharing, but from the terminal. Because the way it works is we would both install it locally, and assuming that we're going to be on a server together, or maybe we just do it locally on my machine, it will give us a URL on the internet essentially. It's going to use their teammate server. And I believe you can also do this on your own. You can create your own servers. So if you don't want to use the teammate in the middle, if you don't trust them, if you want to use their own, you can totally do that. And then it gives, so like this would give, if I set it up, it would give Kevin an SSH URL that I could give him, and he would SSH in with this sort of one-time, it's not a one-time key, but a temporary key, right? And then Kevin would be in my same terminal. We'd be both typing at the same terminal, and we would be inside a TMUX, so that we could both be in Vim at the same time. We both get the same window. So it's very much like that terminal you had in VS Code, and it just works. So I thought we would demo it, but now that we just demoed the VS Code one, it's kind of the exact same thing. We're just typing the command instead of clicking in VS Code. So I don't think we need to actually to do this anymore. And quite frankly, with VS Code, I'm not sure that I would use this. The one reason maybe is if I'm on a server and I want us to troubleshoot it together, right? Like if I have a machine, I need your help on it. Maybe you don't have an SSH key to it, but I want you to see my window, but I want to do more than just screen sharing. I want to actually have it interactive. But you would need to run teammate locally. I'd run teammate locally, and then I'd give you that key. Did you actually get it installed?
I got it installed. Yeah.
And
basically sitting here, it's just staring at me.
Yeah. So let me I'm going to jump in a temporary server. Let's see if we can make this work.
Okay.
So I have a server on the internet. It has nothing on it. I'm going to pull it up on my screen real quick. Oops. And all right, so I'm on an Ubuntu server. It's on DigitalOcean. And Kevin has no access to this server. I'm the only one with an SSH key to it. I'm going to go ahead and install Teammate. So that's apt-get install Teammate. Oh, I need to do an update. And then install Teammate. And it's technically like installing TMUX plus the Teammate wrapper, because it's a fork of Teammate that adds this extra sort of whiz-bang stuff. Come on. You can do it. All right. Now, I'm here at the terminal, and all I'm going to do is run Teammate. Oh, maybe do I need something extra? It says once installed. I didn't test this on a vanilla server, so oh, it's probably because I don't have an SSH key. All right, let's see how we can do this. So I'm going to run this locally instead, on a local box instead of on the remote box, since I don't want to have to do a keygen. We ain't got time for that. All right, since I don't want to show these session keys on the internet, I'm going to give Kevin the URL that it gives me. It's an SSH URL.
All right. So I will copy. Invalid session token. Let's try that again.
I can get, right. And the nice thing is it gives me 4 keys. I'll show these keys in a second once the session is no longer valid, because I don't want random people hopping into my machine. Are you getting an error?
Yeah, it's getting me an error.
All right, let me try.
Invalid session token.
Invalid session token. All right, here's a web session. You can try that one. Technically, I guess I could give this one to everyone because this is a read only. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I see what
So
web says.
so here we go. I'm gonna put this in chat. We'll see what we break. What's the worst that could happen? It's only my local machine. So that what that is that URL that I put up there is a web URL that's a read-only version of my shell, and
Oh. All right, I got it working in the shell now.
all right. Let's see. Contemp Jacko. So it's not a screen share, right? It's actually now. So you're in. Can you do an LS?
No, it looks like it's only read only.
Huh.
Yeah, I can't type into it.
Yeah. It's cool though. It gives you web and SSH versions of.
Yeah.
So if I can even give you a web session that is read write. So let me give you that one.
Let's try. All right. So teammate is kind of like Vim. I don't know how to quit it.
Try Q or Control C.
That's what I'm. Oh, nope. No, that wasn't it. Yeah, Control C is not working. Like Vim commands don't work.
Yeah. This is what happens when we test things on the internet.
How do I quit teammate?
So we're in this session, right? And you can see at the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry. TMUX. Oops, I got Windows popping up. TMUX. Right. So this is just TMUX. So you can just use. I don't know how that happened. You can just use Control B, which is a default. So let's say you want to detach. Control B is like the command that tells you in TMUX to give me the command interface, and then you just hit D for detach. So it'll keep it open, but you'll be able to go back to your shell.
Yeah, it's not working. Control B, you said?
Yeah.
Nope.
Huh.
Weird. Yeah, I'm like. I muted my Skype accidentally, hitting it random keys on the keyboard.
Keyboards. Yeah. I don't know. Oh well, maybe the keys aren't the same by default.
Let's see. I feel like this should be something easy to do because I can't. All right. Well, when in doubt, I'll just close the tab.
And that's what. Yeah. When I'm in here and I can do Vim and everybody should be able to see this. Let me do in the gym file.
So you just gave me a new.
And people are basically looking at my shell inside Vim on the web. And what's interesting is that it could be, because it's not a screen share. It's actually like trying to. There you go. There you go. That's Kevin moving the mouse or the cursor around rather.
So I'm not sure if this is a whatchamacallit, WSL issue or a teammate issue, but like several of like your line endings are showing up as unknown Unicode characters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I got a feeling that that's you. Are you in Windows Terminal?
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the web interface, and the web interface looks good except for the special characters. So if you see on my screen, like up at the top where there's this gem file in the very top left, there's a little fire at the end of it. It looks like fire or something coming out of it. That's a special.
That part.
Yeah, that's a special code. Well, if you look at my window in Skype, where that says that gem file, the pink thing, those are special characters in my font. So I have a special nerd font, they call them, that has all these special characters in it that I can apply inside my Vim. By the way, if you're interested in all this Vim command line stuff, you can go to it's HTTPS www.bretfisher.com/shell. So you can go to my shell page and you can get all of the different stuff, all the things. But anyway, that doesn't show up well on the web version. So the web version, which I'm just going to show here in my
All right. So don't recommend doing this from like WSL.
What's weird is doing this on Chrome worked, but doing this on Firefox, it gives a green background. So it's definitely some sort of HTML, CSS. There's lots of funkiness going on there, but it's a little bit better in Chrome.
Yeah.
If I show Chrome, it's a little bit. Can I zoom in on that? Yeah, that's it's a little bit better functionality in Chrome than it is in Firefox. But yeah, this says the HTML5 client is a work in progress. TMUX key bindings don't work. There's known graphical bugs. Yeah, and that's pretty hard. That's pretty amazing that they're able to do that to begin with, because like characters and encodings and stuff like that are a nightmare. So anyway, that is Teammate with TMUX. Another one of those tools that I use rarely, but when I do with a team, it works. And I haven't had to use a lot of TMUX lately, just because a lot of people are just moving to VS Code. When we want to share things and work together on things, VS Code is the way to go. And then a lot of us are just, we're lazy. We screen share. We don't use these tools until we need to collaborate. And I think that's going to be more common nowadays. So anyway. All right. So it sounds like we don't have any other people talking about stuff in chat. I'll give you the link to Teammate, though, so that you have that. And we're going to wrap this sucker up. And I hope that some of these tools were useful for people. I think I'm hoping that at least one new tool you didn't know about that you can check out. And of course, if you're around still in chat or in the comments and you're watching this later, throw in your ideas and I'll be checking those out as well, because I think all of us are trying to manage a remote work as much as possible. If you want to check us out on the internet, one Kev Griff over there on Twitter, this way, down there. Mm-hmm. And I'm Bret Fisher on Twitter. And you can make sure you do the subscribe and like and all that stuff on this so you can get more of my YouTube live streams. We're here every week. And sometimes Kevin shows up, even in chat.
Yeah.
Because we like to hang out. And Kevin himself, you have a bunch of stuff on the internet. So where can people find you other than Twitter?
Other than Twitter, so I have my own YouTube page. It's called SwiftKick. Here, I'll drop a link in the chat. So I also do some streaming on Twitch at one Kev Griff. Same username everywhere.
You do some coding,
so there
right?
we go.
You do some code.
What's that?
You do development on Twitch, right?
I do. So usually I try to play around with stuff I don't know anything about, or I pick up new projects and start moving forward on them. Twitch is live streaming on Twitch is just my excuse to try new things I wouldn't be able to bill for.
Right.
So it's great for that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right. So find them on YouTube. Find them on Twitch. If you don't see one Kev Griff, also look for SwiftKick, which is his alter ego. And we will be back here next week. I'm going to have a special guest working on Kubernetes projects, a Kubernetes add-in that I will get more details out to you. If you follow my Patreon page, you don't even have to be a member. If you just follow it, you'll get a lot of these updates of things I'm sharing for free. And then, of course, if you want to keep supporting this show and the podcast that comes out of it, you can always become a Patreon member, and I would really appreciate that. And thank you for all of those that are already patrons, because that's how this show gets supported, is by the kind donations from people out there. So thank you so much. And Kevin, I will see you later. Thank you all to the internet, and we'll be back here next week on YouTube Live. Ciao.
Thanks, everyone.